Good morning, boys and girls. This is Kosala, also known as Marventus, bringing you another one of my first-person casts of the Bronze League action that I am going through. Those of you who have been following along from my casts on my channel will know that by and large I do most of my casts of my own games. The purpose of the exercise is to provide an educational base out of my own experiences as I document my climb through the Bronze League. You'll be happy to know I'm actually climbing. When I first started doing these casts, I was in the low 90s, and I used to hang around there while I tested out many different theories and lost many games. And I am now slowly starting to increase my winning streak, and I'm consistently in the 50 to 60 bracket now, as I move on upwards. Thanks again in a shout out to Krilla, a community member on the Blizzard forums that showed me how to optimize my drone building in the early stages. So let's get to it here, fellas. In the bottom left-hand corner, we have the red Zerg. That is myself, Marventus. In the top right-hand corner, we have the teal Protoss, Mr. Iron Guard. Iron Guard, the teal Protoss. And we are on the Xel'Naga Caverns map. Now, at 9 of 10 supply, I will generally get my second Overlord, right? And then at 12 of 10 supply, I will generally put up my first gas, to be followed swiftly by my spawning pool, which is generally the build order I now choose on maps that have a certain amount of distance here, because there isn't too much of a risk of a too early rush. My drone has made its way into the scouting route to the Protoss base. Now, why am I showing this particular game? I had played this game a couple of days ago, and it was an incredibly fun game, and it gave me a wonderful insight to how, as a Zerg, your adaptivity level is so excellent. And you have so many tools at your disposal that you never need to give up, even in desperate situations, without giving it one more salvo, really. So what happens in this game is that I actually basically lose. I lose all of my bases. But I managed to pull a rabbit out of the hat courtesy of the Nydus worm to completely save my situation. So this is a very, very exciting game indeed, and I hope you'll agree by watching it. Right, and here we have the Protoss opponent is now starting to get his initial buildings up. He's got a forge up and running. Right, he's got 2 cannons up there, which I assume is to prevent any kind of early rush that I may be doing, which I hardly ever do, but it's wise of him to try to prevent it anyway. We have probes being chrono boosted. And in the meantime, I am trying to get my drone count up. I've got 1.5 rows of drones out there. I have my spawning pool up. My metabolic boost is being researched, which is generally what I do with the first 100 gas. This is why I get the gas first and the spawning pool second. Got that from, let me just think if I can credit this correctly. I think I got this idea from watching the excellent casts by Day9. Or was it Force 2 Strategy? It's hard to say. You'll find both of these two gentlemen in my subscription list, and if you don't already watch them, you certainly should. Both Force and Day9 do extensively in-depth analyses of Starcraft games and strategies, which I find incredibly useful to read. Keeping in mind, of course, that they generally cast very high-level games, and the gameplay in the Bronze League is considerably different, and well, nonetheless, there's always good stuff to learn there. My Queen out early. My gas is now pumping away, my metabolic boost is about to be researched, and with the next 100 gas I immediately tech up to a lair, which is what's happening right now. In the meantime, we have a gateway coming up for our Protoss opponent. Now, here's the thing I always do as well. My first couple of Zerglings I send off to the Xel'Naga towers in order to get some vision, and I park 2 at the bottom of the base here, just to make sure I know what's coming out at it if something does come at me. Now, in the meantime, I am droning up. Droning up. Lair building almost halfway down there. Drone count now still at 1.5. Actually, why is it at 1.5? Oh yes, I got a hatchery, that's why. Second hatchery going down. Alright, mineral count rising, gas count rising, about to be supply blocked, so out should pop an Overlord any second now. Let's take a look at the income tab. Currently, I am holding myself even with my Protoss opponent. My gas count considerably higher. He hasn't even put up his first gas. Oh, he's just got his first gas up and is about to start mining along with his second gas. And I've got a slightly higher probe count. I've also got a bunch of Zerglings over here that are running around the map. This is something I've started to do lately because I find that in Bronze League matches people do some pretty damn crazy things. I've seen people expanding to way out here bases very, very early on, long before they actually have the economy or the defenses to make it happen. But nonetheless, just to be on the safe side, I get a bunch of Zerglings, or Speedlings as they are now, and I run them across all the mineral points in the map on patrol routes throughout the entire game, just to make sure I know what is going on when it goes on. Let's get back to the production tab. I'm upgrading my overlords. But I'm getting another overlord out, just to make sure I'm not supply blocked, which has screwed me a number of times in previous games. And my second hatchery is just about to be done. Now, as you can see, I've gotten hugely better in my expansions, or rather in my drone expansion over the last few games, where I've gotten my drone count up much faster, and it's made my economy vastly more robust. This was actually absolutely instrumental, but in making sure that I won my last few games. The management of my economy has changed around my game completely. So while all this is going on, I'm tossing out a roach warren. Now at this point I haven't actually scouted anything that requires roaches, but roaches are a base mainstay in my gaming. They are the ground army that I rely on. Therefore it is generally safe for me to stick out a roach warren fairly early because I know I'm going to be using it. So out it comes over there, and an evolution chamber has come out as well. But I'm also tossing up a spire. The reason I'm doing that is because nothing has happened in this game so far. But my opponent has not attacked me. Nothing is going on actually. Right, which is a little odd. So I'm assuming that he's teching up a little bit, and so far I need to find some way to get into that base to take a look. And the best way for me to do that is using mutalisks. So up goes a spire. I want to just pop out a few mutalisks and do some early scouting back here, or my secondary scouting back here. Now, while this is going on, I also have a spore crawler going up here. Because I'm expecting that something similar to a void ray or two may be heading my way. Overseers have been converted, which I do immediately after getting a lair. Right, and my drone production continues, never stopping. Now we're at almost 2.5 there. My initial drones coming out of here will start moving into making gas, because I'll be running out of gas shortly as I start making roaches. So I've got 6 drones on the way to saturate my secondary base. Things are going as they should do. In the meantime, my scouting Zerglings, running their little legs off across the entire map, have spotted absolutely nothing. So quite correctly I am concluding that our Protoss opponent is currently sticking to one base play, which he is. And he's gotten three gateways out here, but he's got barely a handful of units. Not a lot going on right here. So while all this is happening, I realize that we are now hitting the 10-minute mark, and I've got absolutely no idea what the hell's going on in this base. So out comes a few mutalisks. I've got them out right here. Right, time to do some secondary scouting to find out what the hell is going on. Now you see, hotkeys. For some odd reason, I seem to only have used one hotkey so far. I don't use a huge amount of hotkeys, but I generally don't start hotkeying until I have a few armies to hotkey. But generally, and I've seen different people do this in different ways, but I actually like to hotkey 2 of my hatcheries, my first 2 hatcheries, to one hotkey for production, and then I leave the other ones alone, and I manually travel to and click on them for the time being. I know that this is not the most effective way to do it, but I find that overly hotkeying has a tendency to just stress me out completely, and I wind up pushing buttons that don't need to be pushed in a panic state. So by simply taking the time to travel around the map correctly and do things in a very decisive and determined sort of manner, I get out what I actually want, rather than a panic-stricken push at getting something out at all costs. So my APM is generally quite low, and I keep it low on purpose, making sure I only push buttons that I really need to push for the right reasons. And here we go, Mutal is coming in to do some initial harassment. I see it goes, 1 probe goes down, a second one going down, a third one going down, a 4th one, 5th one there as well. 6 probes going down here already, doing quite well there. Now the Stalker's coming in to ward off this round of harassment, but if you go into my cam right here, I have seen everything I need to see on that side of the map. Now I'm still missing the knowledge of the gateways that are over here. Now, under normal circumstances, I would probably just suicide a Mutalisk in here to get a view of that open space. However, I decided not to do that here, because I saw the multiple stalkers, and I simply made an educated guess that he was going for a stalker push, and just left it at that. So I moved my Mutalists back over here to save space and leave them sitting there for a little while I think about how to adapt to this. And I'm responding by pushing out some roaches. So I've got 8 roaches coming out. My second is now 1.5 drones full, 1/2 rose, and my main is now running into its third row of saturation. Alright, and I've got spore crawl, I've got creep spreading. Now this is a thing that I did not do particularly well in this particular game. Generally I'm much better at spreading my creep, but I got carried away with making sure my bases were doing well and my scouting was doing well, and I neglected my creep growth. So as you can see, my creep has barely spread outside of my my base, which is not really that terribly excellent. Got a few zerglings coming out and 3 overlords coming out because I'm about to be supply blocked here. And all the time droning away. Alright, so I've got my economy running nicely, my mineral count is doing outstandingly, my gas count is doing outstandingly. At this point, really, I've really got too many minerals, I've got too much gas, I haven't produced the army that I need, that I can have. And this is something that I still do wrong, really, because when it's that high resource count, you can really stop producing drones and then just produce armies, regardless of what that might be. Right, and I still don't do that. I tend to wait quite a bit until I'm sure I know what's coming my way before producing the initial armies, which can become a bit of a problem. And because I noticed the cannons in front here and knew I couldn't actually get through that, I was trying to find a good backdoor way to get in there, so I started producing a Nydus worm as well. Now I am a huge fan of the Nydus worm. I think it's a fantastic tool that the Zerg have that is incredibly underused in the games that I've seen. It has become an absolute mainstay for me in the way of harassment and mobility. And this Nydus worm completely saved my bacon this time around, because you'll see, the reason I'm casting this particular game is because it turned out to be a suspenseful thriller of a game, where I actually basically lost, but managed to pull a rabbit out of the hat thanks due to this Nydus network. 5 more overloads coming out in order to make sure I stay unsupply blocked, and because I'm about to build an army. So preparing for this, roaches going out, taking out my rocks over here, preparing to put down a 3rd base. Now at this point I don't really need a 3rd base because I've got a huge amount of minerals and I've got a huge amount of gas, and I could actually have simply concentrated on building an army first and then gotten my 3rd base later, which was the right way to do it. So I make a mistake here actually, spreading out a little bit early. And I saw this fantastic cast from Day9 the other day, talking about spread of bases, and he was actually mentioning that that as a Zerg in below platinum levels, you hardly ever need to have more than 2 bases because you get enough minerals together, enough gas together to amass an army to go and do whatever you need to do. And he's absolutely dead right. At 2 bases you can actually stop and just produce units, and you will mass such a huge army that there's no earthly way that anybody is going to counter that. And that is absolutely dead right, because this is why my games tend to take quite a long time, because really at this 17 to 20 minute marker count, I've got all the resources I need to win the game. But instead of producing armies, I'm still expanding. So my games tend to run into the half an hour to 1 hour levels. And this is something I really need to stop doing, because I'm ready to win at this point. Right? And the only reason I don't is because I'm too busy being the base builder. But because I have such a massive amount of resources, upgrades. Now again, this game is a great example of how upgrades totally saved my bacon, because I actually wound up being a much smaller army against a much bigger army, and had I not had the upgrades, I would have been completely screwed. So upgrades coming out here, even more roaches coming out. I have a 3rd hatchery going down, and I am teching up to hive because I have the resources to do so. And here we've got now, let's take a look at our income tab. Now my income is more than twice my opponent's in both gas and minerals. My harvester count hugely higher. Everything is as it should be right there. This is exactly what it should look like. It looks tremendously excellent. Let's take a look at our units. We have 14 roaches, 7 mutalisks, and 24 zerglings versus 16 stalkers, 8 zealots, and 2 colossi. And the push is about to come out from the stalkers. So let's see how we do here. We have, just a moment, gonna restart my timer here, just knocked off at the 14-minute marker to let me know that that 14 minutes have been reached. We have zealots doing the patrol, we have the army pushing out. Let's see what happens.